Look at this old picture I found that I drew when I was a kid. Two dudes who are too old to be high school students but still want to bang high school girls, so they are forever high school students. I think that's the storyline of King of Fighters and Fighters history now. Remember, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly, comment, share, support the channel if you want. Another game theory video. I often talk about why a narrative or storyline can be important in fighting games because it can give the casual viewer sort of like a jump start about what the video game they're about to get into is, what they're about to get into, right? A little bit of a crash course, right? A little bit of why it can be important for, it's better to have a character that is, if the character is going to be overpowered, it's better that the character that is overpowered is showing off the game system rather than a character that is overpowered and doesn't show off the game well, right? Because you want to sell the product to people, right? So I'm going to get into a little bit of a wacky idea. You know, I recently did that video, how I would change Karnovs Revenge, which wasn't extensive, but it was like a small little thing, right? Just little bits, pieces here and there. But kind of some wacky ideas, and just to play into the narrative and storyline of video games, of something wacky you could do to change Karnovs Revenge, potentially, I think, right? So I've talked about before, some people think that you should make it so you have to hit the guy more times before they get dizzy. I don't think this would actually do anything to the game because there's still characters that do multiple hit moves. So if a character like Mizuguchi is hitting you with a 4-hit hurricane kick, a 3-hit dragon punch, as you the camera literally got dizzy as you're getting hit by the dizzy combos, just adding a hit there, what is that going to do to even out the game for characters that don't have big combos in the first place, right? That doesn't, it's, I don't think that would do anything because the lesser characters, they still got to hit you more times, right? So one wacky idea that I've talked about before that I think you could potentially do, and it would create a potentially more interesting narrative for the game in the history of fighting games, is I think you could do something weird. Let's say that, yes, you do. It takes 4 hits now to dizzy the guy, something like that, right? But you could add a gimmick that in the game, in the match, your 2 out of 3 rounds, you can only be dizzied once a game, right? So that would actually potentially be a balancing factor, if you will, because you basically then have this mindset that no matter what, 2 out of 3 games, right? So everyone is going to get dizzy one time, more or less, probably, right? Realistically speaking, right? Because your dizzy points carry over to the next round, right? Look at this. No, I'm not naked. I'm just... Don't get any weird ideas here on the FGC on NPC. Basically, you could have this mindset, right? There'd be a new meta mind game of you're comboing a guy, whatever. And I've talked about aiming dizzy spots, etc. And now you have this mindset, hey, I can dizzy the guy once this match. When am I going to dizzy the guy? Much like I made that game theory video of what they should have done with the wall and strive to actually add a sort of mind game. And it's also exciting for the announcers to sell the product to the consumer, the people watching too. So say, let's take a character like Ray. Normally you almost never combo into wheel kick, right? But maybe a character like Ray is like, well, fuck, Dynamite Tackle is almost always is my best combo choice, you know, as in Fighter's history as it is now, right? But in this new Fighter's history, there's this mind game of fuck, maybe I'm versing a character like Gene or Lee, right? Who the Dynamite Tackle easily hits. But you're like, fuck, I'm already winning this match. Do I want to keep comboing into Dynamite Tackle? Because what if the next round I want to save this dizzy spot because then I know I'll be able to dizzy the guy right off the bat. So now maybe I actually want to try to do some wheel kick combos because it's going to hit the guy in the head. It's not going to hit a point of his dizzy spot. But then you go even further and then it shows off the game because you're like, wait a second, what if the opponent knows that I know that he wants to do this, so then he's going to try to duck out of wheel kick combos. Right? Do you see what I'm getting at? A character like Mizuguchi, you're like, fuck, anytime I ever hit a random hurricane kick, let's say I hit the guy 2 points of dizzy, right? The guy's been hit twice, or I said 4 times. Maybe it takes 4 hits to dizzy the guy now, right? Say the guy's been hit 3 times. I'm already winning the match. I hit a hurricane kick. Normally, I might try to do after the hurricane kick, a duck little kick, link into a hard punch DP, because that's going to hit the head. But you're like, fuck, I'm already winning this match. I don't want to waste that dizzy spot. So now when I link off the hurricane kick, no matter what, I'm always going to do duck little kick sweep. Because I want to save that dizzy spot for the next round in case I need it to win that match. Do you get what I'm saying? This would actually be a wacky potential way to add another layer of meta to the video game, another layer of storyline to the game for the consumer. Do you get what I'm getting at? A little bit wacky, but it's something you could do. And in a way, it could be a bit of a balancing factor because this does balance out the idea of Karnovs Revenge has sort of some coin flip moves, right? This, of course, would weaken a character like Mizuguchi or a character that has multiple hit moves because the idea that those characters can potentially dizzy you every match is no longer a factor. Because now every character is probably going to dizzy you once in the whole game itself, right? The 2 out of 3, right? So the potential problem for this as well is I do think it makes the potential lame factor of characters even better. Like characters like Jean, Ray, Samche, who are so powerful, Clown, you know what I mean, powerful at the laming you out part of the game. This is only going to make them probably better, right? Characters that don't necessarily play the dizzy point of the game, or I should say the, potential, oh, fuck, I flipped a coin and I lost. These characters are powerful at the lame part of the game, right? Fireballs are so powerful in the game. So that is potentially bad because I think that is from a gameplay or a narrative of Karnovs Revenge in the mind of the consumer. It is the worst part about the game because it makes it kind of a Street Fighter clone seeming in a bad way. But I do think that potentially it does balance it out just because I can think of those instances of a character like Mizuguchi hitting a hurricane kick and the announcers being like, shit, is he going to go for the dizzy spot here? Or does he think he needs to dizzy the guy the next round? You know what I mean? Oh, you're like, oh, this is so cool. He's doing the sweep because he wants to save that dizzy spot for the next round because then he can one-shot you. Or that potential idea when you see a character like Ray, you're like, fuck, Ray, is he going to do the tackle or is he going to keep going for wheel kicks because he thinks that he needs that dizzy spot for the next round? You know what I mean? But then you have the mind game of jigging up and down. Oh, he ducked it because the opponent knew that he was going to go for the high dizzy spot. So then he ducked it. So there's kind of a balancing factor. And although I do think that it would make a character like Mizuguchi potentially weaker, you know what I mean? To take away potentially some of this coin flip stuff. And it makes potentially a little bit of the lame factor better. It might be balanced out and nature might find a way that it might be more interesting, right? Do you get what I'm getting at? Hopefully, because there's a new mind game that is not possible now in other games. No other fighting game do you think that, wow, how dizzy I am counts over to the next round. Do you get what I'm getting at? And when you sell a product to something or sell a product to somebody, a consumer, that is a potentially interesting narrative, and it's something that would be really easy for the announcer to explain to the casual audience as well, right? And there's more ways you could take this. You could take it like, oh, maybe when a character, the next round, so say it takes 4 hits to dizzy the guy now, maybe if the guy had not been dizzy, they get an extra hit of dizzy point, right? Like, oh, maybe everyone recovers 1 dizzy point a round, right? But generally speaking, right, you know what I mean? So... And you could go a step further. You could say that maybe, well, to balance that out as well, if the guy had been dizzy the first round, maybe they're going to take another 25% damage for the rest of it to try to add even more layers. There could be even some more layers like, oh, maybe when characters block, every character has a specific move that if they block, it can potentially add up your dizzy, but you know what I mean? It will never actually break the dizzy point. You know what I mean? There's so many different things you could do. Maybe every character, they only have one move that could break the dizzy point. There's lots of things you could do, which is, asterisk marks, and we don't have to do that. But basically the idea is generally, though, Add another point of dizzy, but make the dizzy carry out. Do you get that bit, that general idea? And I think that could also work because I talked about that new move you could give Karnov in the next game that could be kind of interesting. You could even add a sort of suicide kind of move where the guy automatically dizzies themselves. You know what I mean? Like down 4 times in all 4 buttons. The guy falls down and they dizzy themselves. You know what I mean? Something like that. It's like, wow, they don't want to deal with this. Maybe a character, let's say a character like, wow, they were going to say, okay, so example, say if you've ever played the game, you know what I mean? Sometimes you're like, fuck, I'm beating the guy, but my character's flashing right now, right? And maybe it's Zazzy, and Zazzy just hit me with a random 100-hand bitch slap, and now I'm dizzy, and I lost the round. So maybe you're like, well, fuck, I could get better, better immediate attack setups, whatever, because I hit my sweep. But maybe just because I don't want to take that potential chance of being one-shotted, after my sweep, I down 4 times, I 4 buttons, my character falls down, their dizzy spot fell off, but I'm not actually dizzy. Now I don't have to worry that if I got hit by an extra hit here in the round, I automatically lost the round to a dizzy combo. Does that make sense? There's potentially different interesting narratives and storylines you could add to the game through a mechanic like this, right? Again, a lot of different things you could do. Take it with a grain of salt. How far you would want to go with it. Do you want maybe some like moves on block, even add to your dizzy? Maybe you would say that you take 5 hits to dizzy, then something like that. But there's a lot of potential different ideas you could do here. And again, the idea is that a narrative in a storyline or video game is sometimes important, right? Because you want to sell people on a video game, sell it on why it's different. And that's why I always say Karnovs Revenge actually has a lot of interesting things, but the narrative failed because so many powerful characters in the game are not powerful in a interesting narrative perspective, right, to the casual audience, right? If a character like Mizuguchi, like I said, no one had ever even showed that Mizuguchi could be played like I played him until I did, right? You know what I mean? And he's only, he's kind of like a mid-tier character, right? So he's not always in the limelight to show the game is interesting. A character like Karnov is so perfect because the character is an interesting character. When you see people talk about Karnovs Revenge, you're like, oh, this game is a Street Fighter 2 clone, but Karnov is cool. People still make jokes about the Karnov balloon because he's a powerful character and his gimmick is interesting and it's in the competitive narrative of the game. So it's easily digestible. And that's, again, why the game failed, because generally speaking, the competitive nature of the game is not interesting to the casual viewer. Only Karnov is interesting. Had Mizuguchi been one of the best characters in the game, there's a bit of a storyline you can see with him. He can aim dizzy spots. He has combos that are not normal for the time period that the game came out. So hopefully you get what I'm saying that. So basically, doubling down on the dizzy system, adding a different perspective on it, could have made the game potentially more interesting, and is an idea I would have toyed with if I was rebalancing the game. Would I have kept it? I don't know, because again, I think it does potentially make the lame factor of the game too good. You know what I mean? So, but it might balance it out from a narrative perspective, and nature might find a way. You know what I mean? But I guess we'd have to see. Anyway, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. The end.